Okay, water pollution. So you've seen the picture here. This is an example of our bodies of water. Relatively dark, you see plastics, styrofoam. So what are the materials you see here? Plastic bottles, plastic cups, diapers, sanitary napkin, both with wings and without wings. Okay. Why is this happening? Because our land, water, and air becomes receptacle of our waste. So waste can be grouped into two types. We have the biodegradable, those materials that can rot. Can you give me examples of biodegradable waste? Yes, paper. What else? Food leftover, vegetable cuttings, any material that can rot. The non-biodegradable are waste materials that resist natural decomposition. This includes plastics, styrofoam, etc. Okay, so what are the effects of pollution? It poses problem on the environment, food chain, and the ecosystem. It disrupts the natural cycles in the environment. Some substances accumulate in several areas and enter the food chain, and it can kill essential organisms in the natural cycle. So this picture shows two sources of water pollution. We have the point source and the non-point sources. Point sources are those that are identifiable, materials that we can easily identify, like the waste treatment plant here and the factories. While the non-point sources are those that you cannot easily identify. You know, you are aware that it produces pollutants, but um, when and the, when they produce the pollutants is quite difficult to identify. Okay. Specific pollutants, as mentioned in the book, the first one is domestic waste. These are products coming from the households. It constitutes 70% of our water pollutants. It includes plastics, cans, bottles, styrofoams, batteries, paints, thinner, cleanser, food leftover, vegetable cuttings, rotten fruits, and manure. It can clog the waterways, resulting to flash floods. Some materials are toxic and can contaminate our drinking water. Okay, this illustration shows how we use water at home. So 35% is used for showers and bath, 30% for toilet flushing, 20% for laundry, 10% for kitchen and drinking, and 5% for cleaning. So what can we learn here? Take note that toilet flushing is 30% of our water usage. So then it shows that we are wasting 30% of clean water for toilet flushing, where in fact you can use that, we can get that from the laundry and from the showers and bath. Okay, other specific water pollutants. We have the organic waste. These are waste material that undergo bacterial decomposition, no, or yung mga nabubulok. So this is a picture of a bacteria that can decomposes waste materials. Next one are biological pollutants. Biological meaning these are living organisms. However, their presence in a body of water, like for example, river, can impose problem. Example is bacteria. Why? Because bacteria, like any other living organism, can utilize oxygen to form harmless compound like carbon dioxide and water. Now, the oxygen that they need during aerobic decomposition is known as BOD. And the amount of oxygen needed for the oxidation of chemicals in a given volume of water over a specified period of time is known as COD. So what am I trying to say here? That bacteria compete with other organisms as to the required, or as to the oxygen, okay, or as to the dissolved oxygen. So the more that you put garbage in a river, the more that they would be utilizing oxygen, the more that they would be competing with that limited resource known as dissolved oxygen in a body of water. Now, the more that you put the garbage, the more that they would decompose, and there will be a time that the river would be depleted of the oxygen. Okay, so what happens? Fish would die. But bacteria in that case can undergo what we call as anaerobic decomposition, or they decompose in the absence of oxygen. Now, it sounds positive because they will still decompose. However, when they do that process, they release methane, which is poisonous, and hydrogen sulfide that gives the stinking smell in the body of water. Now, in the presence of oxygen, they would release carbon dioxide and water. But in its absence, instead of carbon dioxide and water, they would release methane and hydrogen sulfide, which is poisonous. Thus, if that happens, the methane would kill all aquatic organisms. It can turn the river dark and putrid, and at sometimes we declare it as biologically dead. Okay, we have other biologic pollutant. We have janitor fish and the water lily. So please discuss among yourselves how janitor fish and water lilies becomes a problem. What are the negative effects brought about by these two organisms in the aquatic ecosystem? Okay, we have plastic and styrofoams. These are very self-explanatory. They are non-biodegradable, so then they can clog waterways and canals. Detergents is used for cleaning. It contains an active ingredient, alkyl benzene sulfonate, that causes foam in the stream. However, ABS is toxic. That's why when fish tends to eat the foam, they die. Then we have industrial waste. Any industries, textile, paper mills, feed mills, whatever, they release substances that uh, imposes negative effect in our bodies of water. Then we have mining. The residue of mining is known as mine tailing. It comes from ore extraction, from the preparations from mining operations. So mining is really a big problem because to extract mines, at sometimes they use large amount of acid. So it's responsible for the release of large quantities of acid in the body of water. It loads the river with sediments and other toxic components. Silt and sediment interfere with the transmission of light through the water and also make the river shallower. The soil becomes loose and it loses its water holding capacity. Then sugar mills. Okay, these are industries that produces our table sugar. Now, this kind of company would cause the release of hot water coming from cleaning of evaporators. How do you produce sugar? Sugar is coming from sugar cane. So they extract the juice, place it in evaporators, then let the water evaporate so that you'll have your crystals. So where does the problem comes in? When they need to clean the evaporators, they need to clean it while it's hot because the sugar rim or the rim would become filled with sugar paste that's difficult to remove. So if they are about to clean the evaporators, this kind of process would cause what we call as thermal pollution, or the discharge, the release of hot wastewater in a body of water that affects the oxygen content, leading to fish suffocation. So this happens because fish cannot regulate temperature change. Okay, then we have the alcohol distillery. These are companies that produces your rum, the brandy, tanduay, and examples. It's coming from molasses. It's actually methyl alcohol from molasses. Now, these companies would cause the release of an effluent that requires an oxygen demand of 40,000 milligrams per liter to 50,000 milligrams per liter. Now, the government allows a wastewater to be released in a river if it contains only 50 milligrams per liter. So you see the difference, 40,000 as compared to 50. So a liter of this can turn the water black. It has a stinking odor. So it can literally make the river biologically dead. Then we have chemical plants, metal factories, pulps and paper mills. They contribute to thermal pollution due to the release of toxic chemicals like acid, alkaline metals such as silver, copper, zinc, arsenic, chromium, cyanide, and mercury. Now let's focus a little on mercury. There are three elements, three forms of mercury: elemental, phenyl, alkoxyalkyl, or divalent. But whatever it is, it can be converted to methyl mercury soluble. So once it's in the water, you cannot recognize that there's mercury on it. The fish would ingest the mercury, and then man eats the fish. Now, if man have reached 20 parts per million of mercury within the body, the man starts to observe neurologic effects such as numbness, tingling lips, lack of muscle coordination, hearing impairment, speech and vision impairment, and emotional disturbance. Now, there is one case in Japan wherein the whole town have experienced the same symptom. It happened in Minamata, Japan. That's why now we call um, we call mercurial poisoning sometimes as the Minamata disease, named after the town in Japan wherein the symptom of mercurial poisoning was observed. Then we have agricultural waste. This would include fertilizers that contain nitrogen and phosphorus to leach or reach our groundwater. Nitrates can cause infant methemoglobinemia or the blue baby syndrome. Then phosphate can cause extensive algal bloom and contribute to eutrophication. Pesticide can cause the development of resistant pest species. Then oil is attributed to oil spill. So oil, if found on top of water, can confuse birds. So birds would dive in. If that happens, their feathers would be coated with oil, so they lose their insulating property, and it will be difficult for them to fly away. So that would explain why in most cases that there's oil spill, you'll find a lot of birds floating. And then also fish can be confused. They can eat the oil and it can interfere with their digestion, and it would lead to respiratory failure. Plus the oil forms a film on top. It prevents sunlight to penetrate down, prevents photosynthesis. That would also lead to a decrease in the dissolved oxygen. So that's why what happened in MV Solar 4 in Guimaras is one of the most devastating ecological accident that happened in the history, because the oil spill have reached roots of the mangroves in the nearby coastal area of Guimaras. Okay, red tide is a problem. It's caused by protozoans such as Goniorax cantanella and Pyridinium bahamense variety compressum. This protozoan produces saxitoxin, which is a neurotoxin or blocks the nerve endings. That's why if a person have been infected by red tide, there is some stiffness of the muscle, okay, or paralysis of the muscle, because that's an effect of the saxitoxin. Okay, lakes is an important body of water because they can be harnessed for irrigation. Now, there are three stages of a lake: oligotrophic, mesotrophic, and eutrophic. So if the lake is young, we call it as oligotrophic. It's deep, little biological growth. And then as years pass by, because of man interference, there will be accumulation of nutrients, sediments, so the lake would become shallower and less biologically productive until finally it would reach the old age or the eutrophic stage, wherein there's algal blooms. What's the problem here? How the eutrophication happens? Since lake is an enclosed environment, several industries like farmlands, municipalities, factories would cause their water or sewage to be thrown in the lake, or sometimes it can leach into the lake. So the lake ecosystem will be overloaded with nutrients and cause the breakdown of chemical cycling. So what would happen if there's eutrophication? Now, eutrophication is defined as the over-enrichment of a body of water over time. This is due to nutrients such as phosphate and nitrate. So these two are actually fertilizers that can cause a rapid algal growth or algal bloom. So if there's an algal growth, it would form a film on top, preventing sunlight to penetrate down. There will be lesser dissolved oxygen. If there's a reduction in the dissolved oxygen, plants would die, animals would die. So then the river can be, or the lake would become biologically dead. So that's the thing with the water pollution. So if you have questions, you can PM me, or if not, then you can answer your activity sheets.